Hello YouTubers, Atarileaf here with a video response to System Psycho's My Top 5 Favorite Game Consoles. What's yours? Well, here's an obvious subject for a video that I've never done, and perhaps that's because my answers are obvious. Nevertheless, I figured it might be a fun video to do, so here we go. Number 5. Sega Genesis. Ah, the Genesis. One of the last consoles I owned before I defected to the wonderful world of farting around with config.sys and autoexec bat commands on a DOS computer to play games. But it was and is a great video game system. The NHL series convinced me to buy a Genesis, and other great franchises like Road Rash kept me there. And now that I'm a collector whose preferences gravitate toward classic arcade ports, I found the Genesis is good for that as well, with great ports of Outrun, Frogger, Space Invaders, and underrated gems like Flicky. It's a great system to collect for and has a library of fantastic games that's hard to beat. Number 4. TurboGrafx 16. If this was a Jeopardy question, it would be, what console did Atarileaf foolishly sell to buy a Genesis? Yep. In hindsight, from a collecting point of view, it was a foolish trade, but hey, I'm a hockey fan, and that new EA NHL hockey game's pull was too strong. However, now that I've re-established my passion for this underrated machine, it's an easy fit into my collection. It really does have a fantastic library of games, many of which I had at the time, like Blazing Lasers, Alien Crush, Galaga 90, and of course the Bonk series. It's a system that never got a fair shake in North America, due mostly to poor marketing and lack of third-party support, but as a collector's item, it's hard to beat the fantastic library that the TG16 provides. Number 3. Nintendo Entertainment System. Ah yes, the system that single-handedly resurrected the video game industry from the depths of the abyss, at least here in North America. I was in my late teens in 1988 when I finally bought an NES, and I found myself playing Duck Hunt more than Super Mario Bros. But now, as an adult collector looking back at the NES library, I found that it is a great console for playing arcade-quality ports of classic games. In fact, a cursory look at my Nintendo collection will reveal that, not surprisingly, classic arcade ports dominate my NES shelf space. This alone is the reason the NES is in my top 3. Number 2. Atari 7800. This is the only system in my list that I didn't actually own growing up. The Atari 7800 was released in 1986, at a time in my life when I was more into playing with my Tandy Color computer than anything the consoles of the time had to offer. However, when I did eventually get my first 7800 about a dozen years ago, I was hooked on the machine and its small but quality library of great arcade games. Some of my favorites are Asteroids, Centipede, Food Fight, and Joust, and as a classic arcade enthusiast and Atari fan, it's a machine that can't be beat. I love my 7800. Number 1! Atari 2600. Really, was there ever any doubt? If you followed my channel even briefly or casually, or even just glanced at my username, it's quite obvious what my first video gaming love is. I can still remember the hype when Space Invaders was released. I had been playing games like Adventure and Air Sea Battle at my cousin's house on their 2600, but it wasn't until Space Invaders came out that I knew I had to convince my father, somehow, some way, that we needed an Atari VCS in the house now. Of course, the rest is history. So many great arcade games that I can't even mention them all, but suffice it to say that the Atari 2600 was a machine that I loved both growing up, and now it's an indelible part of my life, and forever will be. It is, without a doubt, my absolute favorite gaming machine. There can be no other but the one, the only, Atari 2600. I'd also like to note some honorable mentions, like the Super Nintendo, a machine that my wife and I owned briefly at the tail end of the machine's life, but again, great arcade ports like Mr. Do, Arkanoid Do It Again, and great puzzle games like Tetris Attacks and the fantastic quasi-follow-up to Blazing Lasers, Space Megaforce, make the SNES a machine that I love to own. Also, I would be remiss if I didn't mention the one machine I didn't own but always pined for, the ColecoVision. How could someone who loves old arcade games like I do not want a ColecoVision? So many great ports that graphically surpassed anything available on Atari or Intellivision. I was green with envy toward anyone lucky enough to own one of these in the 80s. So, there you have it. My top 5 favorite gaming consoles. So, what are yours? This is Atarileaf. Thanks for watching as always, and I'll see you soon.